Hello, guys. John Soto Cast here. Today, I want to talk about something that's been in the news lately. As of late, Trump put out something that he wants to do for affordability to help housing costs. And I just did a little bit of analysis. I don't hear anybody talking about this in the space, so I just want to give some bullet points to see if anybody has ideas, because it doesn't seem like we're being led down the right direction. I wonder why this is. So the post that he released, the tweet that he put out there, essentially said, or the truth, whatever he calls it, essentially said that he wants to prohibit large companies from purchasing homes. And well, first off, the one that a lot of people get wrong is that they say BlackRock. I believe it's actually Blackstone that is probably the largest holder. And then not even the holder. Blackstone is an umbrella company, and they have another company in their portfolio that has a large amount of homes. So he wants to prohibit that from happening, because the idea is, if large corporations are purchasing housing and renting it out to people, then the people are just going to be able to only rent, and that's going to drastically increase the overall cost of housing. This is where a lot of people have or are thinking. This is where their mindset is. And if maybe we can do that, maybe that'll help to stop the price of housing skyrocketing, as we've all seen. A couple of quick points. We're going to go down them one by one. First off, how many housing units are there in the United States of America? So from the analysis that I've seen, there's about 150 million units, apartments, single-family homes, multifamily homes, all total together about 150 units in the United States of America. That kind of makes sense, I guess, because we have a little bit like 300 million people, 350 million people. In my house, there's currently 5 people. Before the bigger kids left, there were 7 people in my house. So, that kind of makes sense. You have 150 million units, 350 million people, give or take. Very few people actually live by themselves. That kind of all makes sense. Of those 150 million units, 88 million units are what they call owner occupied. That's quite a bit. That's about a little bit more, but I would say, I think the numbers, it was a little bit difficult to really nail it. Say about half. So half of the units are owner occupied, meaning the person who's paying the mortgage, he's the one living there. So right off the bat, that's not bad. That seems pretty good. From the other numbers I got, about 50 million units nationwide are renter occupied. Okay. So you're 15 million people renting. That doesn't sound that bad. I don't know how they break that down. I don't know if that's broken down per capita. I don't know exactly sure how that works. If they count each individual unit and then how many people living there, I don't know. But of 50 million units are renter occupied. You have about 15 million unoccupied units in the United States. So right away, when I started seeing these numbers, I started putting them together, I started to notice that something may be a little bit off here. So there's a couple of things. I tried very hard to get a solid number as to what would constitute a large corporation ownership in like single family or multifamily homes. Basically units. You have to get down to the units. That's kind of the important thing. So I'm pointing here, but I'm just reading my little analysis here. So the company Blackstone owns, like I said, it's another subsidiary company that owns units, and they own in total, between single family and renting units altogether, about 300,000 units, and they're one of the top players in this market. So, all be told, like when you're looking at it in its entirety, it's about 3 to 4%. So, if the largest player in this game is at 3 or 4%, that's a lot. That's a lot of freaking housing. But even if you added everybody up, even if you added all these large corporations, and I'm going to get to the reason why I put that in quotes, because that's very important. That's actually one of the key components of this. If you added up all these large corporations, you're only going to get, you're still in the single digits of total units that are out there. So even if he were to unilaterally come in and say, any large corporation, no one can buy units, they can't rent them out, we're stopping it right now. you're only going to be affecting probably about 1 million units throughout the entire United States. That's a pretty small number. You know, maybe a couple million. Pretty small number. So here's the other kicker to that. When a lot of people hear corporations owning units, let me see the numbers that I have here. Large corporations of 27%, so about 30% of all of the renters, right? All of the people that are not owner occupied are small mom and pop LLCs, right? So here's honestly, one of the best ways to build wealth, in my personal opinion. I'm not a big business guy. I've had businesses in the past. I'm not very good at it. I know I'm not good at it. I'm not a good boss. I am pretty relaxed, and I think I just, I'm get kind of taken advantage of. So I am not a stern boss. So that's not for me. So I do have income properties, and that is a for sure way, for someone who is looking for cash flow as opposed to like a long. So the good thing about income property is it is both a long-term investment and there is cash flow if you do it correctly. So the properties that I am a small business. I have an LLC. I have a property manager. That is a small business essentially in and of itself, and that generates a small bit of revenue for me every month. As the rents come in, the mortgage gets paid, and the little bit that's left over, I have as income. So the vast majority of the rental units in the United States, that's how it's done. It's kind of a mom and pop operation. So from the numbers that I was seeing, up until about 100 units, that's still considered a relatively small operation. If he were to come in and say, maybe anywhere from like 10 units plus, there would be like a massive tax or something. Basically, what I'm saying is that I don't want to be distracted by this boogeyman of BlackRock, Blackstone, who before I did these numbers, I thought for sure that these numbers are going to be way higher. They were going to be way high. I thought for sure, that they were going to have like 20% of the properties in the United States, and that's not at all what I found. I actually found that the vast majority of ownerships are relatively. They're like me. They have like 3 units. That's right. I have 3 units. Like I'm not a conglomerate, overseas, oligarch, and it's not enough to live off of. But it's supplemental income, and it's something that I can keep growing. And maybe in a couple more years I can get a couple more units, and you grow yourself into where you could help out your family, help out your friends and family, and you could do well for yourself in the United States. But I just thought that was very interesting, and I don't know what we can do about that. I don't know. I feel like the entire apparatus. Not just the right, but even a lot of liberals, they believe that like this Blackstone, they call it BlackRock, but it's really Blackstone. They're the boogeyman. They're the ones that are out there. They're the ones that are inflating the prices, and they're the ones that are creating this housing havoc that we are all experiencing right now, especially for our children. But it doesn't seem to be the case. So a couple of things, a couple of quick points. Now, one, like I said, he could put a cap or could say that after a certain number of units, maybe the tax liability or whatever increases unit by unit by unit. So kind of diminishing somebody's desire to acquire more. That could be something that could be done. The other thing, a couple of quick points. One, obviously we need more supply. We need more supply. That's the only way to bring costs down is to increase the supply. So that's number one. Deregulation across the board. Allow people to build. Get rid of rent control. Right. The burdensome regulation is what tampers down the desire, because if people can't go out there and think that they're going to make money off of taking this massive leap, this massive investment, why are they going to do it? If you know that, okay, I'm going to put $1 million here and I might get, if there's no might, you want to be damn sure that you're going to get something out on the back end that's at least equivalent to that on the other side. Or have a long-term investment where you can say, okay, I'm going to rent this unit out and I will eventually get my money back over a long period of time. The unit will increase in value. There is some good that I can get from that. If you're going to end up renting it out and have rent control and then have the state tell you how much you cannot how much you can increase and cannot increase, it just becomes it doesn't become feasible to somebody that's trying to make a profit in this situation. So obviously regulation, increased homes and regulation kind of go hand in hand. You can't increase the homes without tamping down the regulation. Also the tax incentives. Now this is something that there was the SALT credit that went away. We were going fighting back and forth. I'm very torn on this issue. So what that really meant was, I forget what the SALT stands for, but basically when you live in a place like I do, a very high taxed area. I mean, myself and most of my neighbors here, we're paying about, anywhere from minimum from $10,000 to $20,000 annually in property taxes. That is, so I have some neighbors that pay a hell of a lot more than that, the guys with the really nice houses. But 10 to 20 on the average end for my area, and I am far removed from New York City. I'm still within commuting distance, but I'm talking probably like 60 miles away from the city, give or take just a little bit off that. 60 miles away from the city, still commuting distance. That's a rough commute because then you're starting to hit traffic. So you're really like an hour and a half to New York City proper during traffic, maybe even closer to 2 hours. So you're kind of pushing the limits of commuting to the city from where I am, and the property taxes are still pushing. Like I said, I don't know anyone that's 10. I would say 15 to 20 grand annually per year where I'm living now. So what SALT came is, it said that why is the federal government supplementing state property taxes? So let me explain that scenario. Basically, if you spent $15,000 annually on your state property taxes, you were able to write that off federally. So as a write-off, that wasn't that you got all that money back, but you were able to lower your basically your income by that amount. It was a write-off. So Trump basically said, why are we benefiting states that are overcharging their citizens' property taxes and giving them a benefit when other states that don't do that don't get that benefit? So if you live in another state, like Tennessee or something like that charges relatively low property taxes, they're not getting that write-off because they're governed in a way where they don't have to charge their people absorbing like a crazy property tax just to get by. So that ended up being limited. I think it was like it got chopped down to I think around $10,000. So it hurt people whose property taxes were over 10 grand. I know I'm getting a little bit into the weeds here, but I'm just trying to make my point that I think one of the only things we can do as we should really try. This is just pie in the sky, me throwing this out into the ether. I just believe that if you are owner occupied, if you own your home and you live there with your family, I don't know if it can be done. It would probably take like a federal amendment to do this, but you shouldn't be paying property taxes, period. The fact that you have to pay property taxes means that it's never yours. It is never your home. When you leave, when you die, when you pass on, if somebody doesn't come in there and take over those taxes and care for it and maintain it and make sure that everything's proper with the state, they're just going to take your home away from you. And that means it's not yours. So that's great. Like one of the neighbors that I have here, she's further up, extremely wealthy, mansion of a place. Her property taxes are $50,000. I think it was $60,000 annually. So if she passes away and leaves that to me, all right, Auntie, that's great, but I can't afford $60,000 a year property taxes. So it's not really hers. It's not really mine. It's not really anybody's. Because in the end, the state's going to win in the end. So, this was just my idea. I just think that we have to kind of think outside the box and listen, not that we can't demonize Blackstone, BlackRock, and all those other countries. That's cool. It's very easy to throw shade at them because they're, multi-trillion-dollar organizations. But it was something that, because as soon as Trump made that tweet, as soon as he made that announcement, I was like, this is a great idea. Like, I really thought that this could be a massive, massive solution to this housing issue, to this problem, to the issue of the housing unaffordability crisis that we're experiencing now in the United States. Especially a lot of us that have older children in their 20s, and you're looking at them and you're like, there is no way. Like with the exception of if your kid goes into the military and he can get like a VA home loan. With the exception of that, I don't see how these kids are going to own homes. I don't know. thinking outside the box. I don't understand why can't a conventional loan be 10% down? Like, why can't that be a thing? Why does it have to be 20%? I don't know. I'm not a financial guy. I don't know how this works, but it seems to me that there has to be a way we can structure these things. Well, one of the things that he did bring up that was actually very good was that you can, and this was a great idea. You should be able to pull from your pension or pull from an IRA or something like that, tax-free, and not be penalized if that money is going directly in to the purchasing of a home. That is a fantastic idea, right? You have plenty of people that once they get into their 30s, if they got a good job and they were contributing to an IRA for a solid 10 years, they're going to probably have enough money to put a down payment on a home, but they can't touch that money. That money's for retirement. Well, owning a home, especially if you could put a good chunk of money down, that's a pretty damn good investment, pretty solid investment, pretty stable. You should be allowed to pull from that. In the particular job that I was in, I was allowed to do that. But that was a function, that was a benefit of my employment, that I was allowed to do that. I don't know if I would be able to have purchased and be sitting in this house that I'm sitting into right now if I wasn't allowed to do that, because saving 20% is, it's a jarring amount of money, especially when you consider the average cost of a home in the United States of America right now is over $400,000 a year. So you're talking about a figure of about 80 grand that you got to pull out for a down payment. Add to that closing costs. New York closing costs is insane. Is absolutely ridiculous. New York closing costs for a $400,000, you're going to be paying like 20 grand. So you need $100,000 of liquid cash to walk into the most mediocre home. I don't even know any homes around here that are 400,000. Anything within a mile, an hour drive to the city is not going to be 400,000. You got to go a bit further out to get that bang for your buck. But then again, most people have to work into the city because that's where the money is. So $100 grand liquid cash when you're talking about what is the average wage? The average wage in New York is obviously higher than throughout the country. But if you're talking about an average, I think average New York City wage, looking at like 60, 70 grand, $70,000 a year, probably taking home like 50 after taxes and after everything like that, taking home 50. So taking home 50, all of that's going to go towards rent. If you're living anywhere near New York City and you got 50 grand in your pocket annually, you're not saving anything. You're not bringing anything home. Nothing is being retained. That's a reality of how we live right now, of what's going on. But that was a great idea, being able to pull from retirement. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, because again, this is something that it's a fluid thing that I'm thinking about. I really thought it was a fantastic idea as soon as I heard it, and then I just did a little bit of digging. I haven't seen anybody do this yet. I haven't seen anybody do this type of analysis yet. I was hoping to get this out there so that people that are definitely smarter and more knowledgeable than me in this topic can start bouncing this around, like figuring this out, like blaming these large corporations. In this particular case, I don't think is going to get us the result that we're looking for. Again, if they're overall, even if they had 10% market share in all of the housing, and you just eliminated that, you figure, all right, you're going to drop 10% off the price. That's not how that works. But even if you drop 10% off the price, that still brings the median home price to $360,000 a year, and that's not really changing much. The structure has to be changed. The environment has to be changed. How much down payment probably needs to get changed. That's the only way that I can see it really taking hold and helping these kids out that are trying to get their foothold on life and get their first home. That's what you need. If you want a family, you need a house, you need a home to make a family, and we all want these our children to have families and to thrive. Let me know what you think, guys. Interesting topic, kind of weird. Again, I was thinking one way. I started digging into it, took me completely another way. So if you guys want to follow me on X, 623 Talk on the X, drop a comment down below. Tell me if you think I'm an idiot. Tell me if you think, wow, I didn't even think about that. Dig into the numbers yourself, too. If you find any of my numbers inaccurate, let me know. I would love to know. I want to know more about this topic. I want to know more about this because I really think this could help tremendously in the midterms if we can get this under control and try to get a foothold on the actual crisis that we have, which is our young people not being able to get into homes. But guys, thank you so much for all the new subs. I really appreciate it. 6283 Talk on the X. I'm John Soto. See you in the next video, guys. Take care. Thanks a lot.